Wait, you need to hear this story before you keep scrolling. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover something that will completely change the way you see animals. And look, I'm not exaggerating. What happened between this fisherman and an injured otter defies everything we thought we knew about the connection between humans and wild animals. But before I tell you what really happened, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered if animals can truly feel gratitude? If they really remember who helped them? Stay until the end, because the answer will surprise you. And go ahead and drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any incredible stories like this one. Seriously, you won't want to miss what's coming. The unexpected encounter. It all started on a cold winter morning. John was doing what he always did, fishing alone at his favorite spot, a small river far from the city. It was one of those quiet days where the only sounds were the wind in the trees and the water running. Nothing special, just another normal day. But then he heard it. A faint sound, almost imperceptible. It was like a low, repetitive moan. At first, John thought it was just his imagination, but the sound continued and continued. Curious, he set his fishing rod aside and went to investigate. And what he found would change his life forever. Among the rocks on the riverbank, there was an otter. But it wasn't a common otter running freely through the water. She was injured, bleeding, with a paw trapped in the remains of an abandoned fishing net. Her eyes were wide with fear and pain. She was trembling. Most people would have turned around. Otters can be aggressive when scared, but John wasn't most people. The decision that changes everything. Now, if you've ever saved an animal, drop a like so I know, because you'll perfectly understand what John felt in that moment. He knew he had two options: turn his back and let nature take its course, or risk being bitten trying to help a panicked wild creature. John looked into that animal's eyes and saw something he couldn't ignore. He saw fear, yes, but also hope. Slowly, very slowly, he approached. He spoke softly to the otter, as if she could understand his intentions. "Easy, girl. I just want to help you. I promise I won't hurt you." The otter looked at him. And here comes the part that gives me goosebumps every time I tell this story. She stopped struggling, as if somehow she understood that he was there to help. With careful, trembling hands, John began cutting the net. Each movement was delicate, calculated. The otter's paw was injured, bleeding. He knew she needed more than just to be freed. She needed care. What happened next, no one expected. And now comes the part you need to hear until the end. After freeing her, John did something many would consider crazy. He took his shirt, ripped a strip of fabric, and improvised a bandage around the otter's injured paw. Throughout the entire process, she stayed quiet, almost motionless, allowing him to help her. When he finished, John took a step back, expecting her to immediately flee back to the water. After all, she was a wild animal. She should be afraid of him. But you won't believe what happened. The otter didn't run away. She stayed there, looking at him, for long seconds that felt like an eternity. They just looked at each other. Then slowly, the otter approached John. His heart was racing. He didn't know what to expect. And then she did something extraordinary. The moment that no one could explain. If you're enjoying this story, comment "amazing" down below and share it with someone who loves animals. The otter pressed her head against John's hand, gently, like a cat would. It was an unmistakable gesture of gratitude, affection, trust. Whatever it was something deep and unexpected. John froze. Tears began rolling down his face without him realizing it. Here he was, a solitary fisherman who had left home just looking for peace and quiet, living a moment of connection so pure and unexpected that he didn't even have words to describe it. But the story doesn't end there. No, not at all. After that moment, the otter finally returned to the water. John thought he'd never see her again. He went home that day changed, but assumed it had been a one-time encounter, a magical moment that would never repeat itself. He was wrong. The unexplainable return. 3 days later, John returned to the same spot to fish. It was early, the sun just beginning to rise. He was preparing his rod when he heard a noise in the water. It was her. The otter was back. And not only that, she was swimming towards him, deliberately, as if she had recognized him. John was speechless. Her paw still had the bandage, a bit worn by the water, but still there.
And here's the part that scientists still try to understand. The otter brought something to him, a fish. She placed the fish on the bank near where John was sitting and stayed there looking at him, as if she was offering a gift. Biologists who later heard this story explained that otters occasionally bring food to their young or mates, but bringing food to a human, that was something rarely documented and extremely unusual. The connection that defies science. If you're moved, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this need to be shared. Over the following weeks, something extraordinary continued to happen. Every time John went fishing at that spot, the otter appeared. Sometimes she just swam nearby. Other times she brought small gifts, shiny stones, twigs, even aquatic flowers. John began documenting these encounters. He took photos, made videos, not because he wanted fame, but because he knew no one would believe him without proof. And even with proof, many people doubted. How could a wild animal develop such a bond with a human? How did she recognize him even after days without seeing him? How did she know those gifts had meaning? The truth is, there are things in nature that science still can't fully explain. Animal behavior experts who analyzed John's videos confirmed something fascinating. The otter exhibited typical social bonding behaviors, something usually reserved for members of her own species, or occasionally for animals they were raised with since they were babies. But that otter was completely wild, and John was a stranger she had met for only a few minutes during her most vulnerable moment. What this story teaches us. Now let me ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments. How many times have you passed by an animal needing help and turned away out of fear because you were in a hurry or simply because you thought it wouldn't make a difference? The story of John and the otter shows us something profound about compassion and connection. It reminds us that animals are much more aware, much more sensitive, and much more capable of complex emotions than we usually give them credit for. That simple act of kindness, stopping, observing, helping, created a bond that transcended species. And it wasn't just the otter who was transformed. John changed too. He says he now sees the world differently, with more attention, more care, more respect for all forms of life. More stories that will surprise you. And if you thought this story was incredible, just wait until you see the next ones. This isn't the only story of unlikely connections between humans and wild animals. There's the case of the surfer who saved a whale trapped in fishing nets and years later was recognized by her in the ocean. There's the story of the woman who rescued an injured crow and now receives gifts from him every week. There's the man who helped a bear trapped in a snare and was later protected by that same bear when he got lost in the forest. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss these stories. Each one is more incredible than the last. What do all these stories have in common? They show us that when we act with compassion, when we choose to help instead of ignore, we create something greater than ourselves. We create moments of pure connection that transcend language, species, and logic. Your opinion matters. So tell me in the comments, do you believe animals can feel and show gratitude? Have you ever had a special experience with an animal, whether domestic or wild? Would you have had the courage to help the otter like John did, even at the risk of being bitten? And more importantly, did this story change something in you? Will it make you think twice the next time you encounter an animal needing help? Leave everything down here in the comments. I read all of them and love hearing your stories too. And don't forget, drop that like if you were moved by this story, subscribe to the channel for more incredible content like this, and hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post a new story. Share this video with that friend or family member who also loves animals. They'll thank you. Because at the end of the day, stories like these need to be told. They remind us of what really matters. They show us that small acts of kindness can create unforgettable connections, and they inspire us to be better, kinder, more attentive to the world around us. Until the next incredible story, folks, and remember, kindness is always worth it.